The massive research vessel Horizon drifted silently through the cold darkness of deep space, its sensors scanning the infinite blackness. Captain Hygiene Park watched the holographic displays, her fingers tapping nervously against the command console. Something was different about the anomalous signal they had detected hours ago. Jae-won Kim, the youngest researcher on board, leaned closer to the spectral analysis screen. His eyes narrowed, tracking the unusual energy signature that seemed to pulse and shift like a living thing. Unlike traditional spacecraft, this signal didn't follow any predictable pattern. "It's moving," he whispered, more to himself than anyone else. The ship's chief science officer, Dr. Kim Sung-ho, approached the young researcher's station. "Describe what you're seeing." Jae-won's hands moved quickly across the holographic interface, pulling up complex visualizations. The signal wasn't just moving, it was adapting. Each time the Horizon's tracking systems tried to lock onto its coordinates, the unknown object seemed to subtly alter its molecular structure. "It's alive," Jae-won muttered. Alarms suddenly blared across the bridge. Red warning lights flickered, casting an eerie glow on the crew's concerned faces. The unknown object was no longer just a signal, it was approaching rapidly. Captain Park's voice cut through the tension. "Defensive protocols. Now." But something held Jae-won back. While other crew members prepared for potential conflict, he saw something different in the approaching entity. The molecular shifts weren't aggressive, they seemed almost communicative. The ship's defensive systems hummed to life. Energy shields charged, weapon systems primed. Every member of the crew tensed, expecting a violent encounter. Instead, a soft blue light began to pulse outside the main viewing window. The light wasn't harsh or threatening. It moved with an almost gentle rhythm, like a complex, living heartbeat. Jae-won's hand unconsciously reached toward the communication panel. His colleagues looked at him like he was crazy. Touching a potentially hostile alien signal went against every standard protocol. "Wait," he said softly. The blue light suddenly transformed. Where moments ago there had been an undefined energy signature, now a distinct shape began to emerge. It wasn't a traditional spacecraft. It wasn't a weapon. It was something else entirely. A form began to take shape, fluid, changing, with no fixed boundaries. It seemed to breathe and pulse, its molecular structure continuously reforming. Within its core, something that might have been eyes, or something completely unlike eyes, seemed to look directly at the horizon. Dr. Sung-ho grabbed Jae-won's shoulder. "Do not engage. This is a potential threat." But Jae-won had already noticed something extraordinary. The entity's movements, while strange, carried a complexity that suggested intelligence. It wasn't randomly shifting, each molecular transformation seemed calculated, almost like a language. "It's trying to communicate," Jae-won said, his voice steady. Captain Park's command was sharp. "Lock weapons. Prepare defensive maneuvers." Yet the entity made no aggressive move. Instead, it continued its intricate dance of molecular transformation, sending out complex wave patterns that seemed to pulse with an almost emotional quality. Jae-won's fingers hovered over the communication panel. Everything he had been trained suggested caution. Everything he felt in that moment suggested something else entirely. One touch. One attempt to understand. The bridge held its collective breath. Something was about to change. Forever inside the sterile white containment chamber, Hannah existed as a prisoner of human curiosity and fear. The walls were thick, reinforced with layers of radiation-blocking materials and quantum-resistant alloys. Every molecular shift she made was tracked by dozens of sensors, each movement interpreted as a potential threat. Jae-won watched her through the reinforced glass, his heart heavy. Hannah was no longer the complex, communicative entity they had first encountered. Here, reduced to a research specimen, she seemed smaller, more fragile. The scientific team treated her like a dangerous experiment. Electrodes monitored her biological signatures, recording every minute change in her molecular structure. Thick protective suits were mandatory for anyone entering her containment area. Fear dictated every interaction. Dr. Sung-ho's reports were clinical and cold. Subject demonstrates unpredictable molecular transformation capabilities. Potential biological weapon. Extreme caution required. Hannah's world had shrunk to this white room. The walls seemed to close in with each passing hour. Her attempts to communicate were met with silence or immediate defensive responses. When she shifted her molecular structure, a natural process for her species, the research team would trigger emergency containment protocols. J1 noticed something the others missed. In her molecular patterns, there was more than just potential threat. There was loneliness. There was confusion. There was a desperate attempt to understand. One evening, during the night shift, Hannah pressed herself against the containment wall. Her form rippled, creating intricate patterns that might have been a language, might have been an expression of emotion. But no one was listening. The research facility was a fortress of human fear. Security protocols transformed her from a living being into a potential weapon. Every observation was filtered through a lens of potential danger. Her complex biological mechanisms were seen as a threat, not a marvel of evolutionary adaptation. J1 began keeping a private log. While other researchers documented her potential destructive capabilities, he noted her subtle communications. The way she seemed to pulse differently when alone. The complex molecular patterns that suggested emotional states far beyond simple survival mechanisms. "She's trying to tell us something," he would whisper to himself, watching the monitoring screens. But his colleagues saw only danger. Military advisors recommended complete isolation. Some even suggested more extreme measures, permanent containment or total neutralization. Hannah's containment chamber became a symbol of human fear. Advanced technology designed to protect became a prison that slowly destroyed her spirit. Each day, her molecular structures became less vibrant, less dynamic. J1 noticed the changes. Her initial complex transformations were becoming simpler, more restricted. It was as if the constant fear and isolation were literally constraining her biological capabilities. During one late-night observation, he saw her create a pattern against the wall, a complex molecular dance that seemed to speak of home, of loss, of deep emotional pain. But the sensors only recorded it as potential threat data, missing the profound communication happening right before their eyes. The facility's chief of security, a stern man named Park Junho, had only one directive: containment and protection of human interests. "We cannot risk allowing an unknown biological entity any freedom," he would repeat during briefings. J1 knew he was alone in seeing Hannah as more than a threat. His colleagues viewed her through a lens of fear, reducing her to a set of dangerous biological capabilities. They saw weapons where he saw a complex, potentially intelligent being trying desperately to communicate. Each day, the gap between understanding and fear grew wider. Hannah's world became smaller. Her molecular transformations became more muted. The vibrant, communicative entity they had first encountered was slowly disappearing, replaced by a being crushed under the weight of human misunderstanding. Something would have to change. And J1 was beginning to realize he might be the only one willing to try it. The laboratory hummed with quiet tension. J1 stood before a complex array of quantum resonance equipment, his hands trembling slightly. Most of his colleagues had dismissed his theories as impossible. Finding communication with an alien entity that could transform its molecular structure seemed like scientific fantasy. For weeks, he had studied Hannah's molecular patterns. Where others saw random shifts, he recognized something deeper, a language more complex than any human communication system. Each molecular transformation carried information, subtle nuances that suggested profound intelligence. His breakthrough came from an unexpected place. Instead of trying to communicate using traditional methods, J1 developed a quantum resonance translator. The device would interpret Hannah's molecular shifts as a form of language, translating her biological movements into comprehensible data. The first attempt failed. Spectacularly. Alarms blared. Emergency containment protocols activated. Hannah's molecular structure went into a defensive pattern that made the entire containment chamber vibrate with energy. But J1 didn't stop. He refined the equipment, adjusting frequencies, studying her previous molecular patterns. Each failure taught him something new about her complex biological communication system. On the seventh attempt, something miraculous happened. A single pattern emerged. Clear. Distinct. Unmistakable. Help, the translator displayed. The word was simple. But its implications were enormous. Hannah wasn't a weapon. She was a sentient being trying to communicate. Dr. Sungho watched in disbelief as Jae-won continued his experiments. The young researcher worked with a determination that bordered on obsession. He understood something the others didn't. This wasn't just a scientific discovery. This was first contact. Hannah's molecular structure began responding differently. Her transformations became more deliberate, more structured. It was as if she realized someone was finally trying to understand her. The quantum resonance translator captured increasingly complex messages. Fragments of her history emerged. Glimpses of a civilization that had survived unimaginable challenges. Her molecular language told stories of survival, of loss, of a species forced to adapt in ways humans could never comprehend. Jae-won worked around the clock. He barely slept, surviving on caffeine and determination. His colleagues watched with a mixture of skepticism and growing curiosity. "She's communicating," he would repeat. "We just need to listen." The breakthrough came during a late-night session. Hannah's molecular structure suddenly expanded, creating a complex pattern that the translator interpreted as a complete narrative. She shared the story of her people. A civilization that had survived a massive stellar catastrophe by developing the ability to adapt at a molecular level. They weren't invaders. They were survivors. The translation revealed a profound truth: her species had developed molecular transformation as a survival mechanism. What humans saw as a threat was actually an extraordinary evolutionary adaptation. Jae-won's hands shook as he recorded the information. This wasn't just a scientific discovery. This was a moment that could change humanity's understanding of intelligent life. The facility's leadership remained skeptical. Military advisors continued to view Hannah as a potential weapon. But Jae-won now had evidence, real, documented communication that showed her true nature. As dawn broke, Hannah's molecular structure pulsed with what could only be described as hope. For the first time since her arrival, she seemed less like a confined specimen and more like a being waiting to be understood. Jae-won smiled. The first real communication had happened. And nothing would be the same again. The universe had just become a little less lonely, and the research facility transformed overnight. Jae-won's discoveries about Hannah challenged everything scientists believed about alien life. Her molecular communication revealed a story far more complex than anyone had imagined. Through the quantum resonance translator, Hannah shared the history of her civilization. Her people were not conquerors or weapons, but survivors of a catastrophic stellar event that destroyed their original homeworld. Their ability to transform at a molecular level was a desperate adaptation, a way to survive in the most hostile environments imaginable. Each molecular shift told a part of her people's journey. They had traveled across multiple star systems, adapting, changing, always surviving. Their biological capabilities were a testament to resilience, not aggression. Jae-won worked tirelessly to document her story. He recorded every molecular pattern, every subtle communication. The scientific community watched with a mixture of fascination and disbelief. Dr. Sungho, once the most skeptical researcher, now sat beside Jae-won during translation sessions. "This changes everything," he would murmur, watching Hannah's complex molecular transformations. The translations revealed something extraordinary. Hannah's species had developed technologies that could heal damaged ecosystems. Their molecular adaptability allowed them to repair environmental damage, regenerate depleted resources, and create symbiotic relationships with different planetary systems. What humans had feared as a weapon was actually a potential solution to some of the most significant challenges facing intergalactic civilizations. Military advisors struggled to process the new information. Their reports, once filled with threat assessments, now contained careful notes about potential collaborative technologies. Hannah was no longer just a specimen, she was becoming a bridge between human understanding and a completely different form of intelligent life. J1 prepared his presentation to the global scientific community. He knew the information would be controversial. Decades of fear and misunderstanding couldn't be erased overnight. The day of the presentation arrived. Research facilities from around the world connected via quantum communication networks. J1 stood calm, with Hannah's molecular patterns displayed behind him. "We are not alone," he began. "And what we thought was a threat is actually an opportunity." He explained how Hannah's species had survived by developing the most extraordinary adaptive capabilities ever recorded. Their molecular transformation was a complex language, a survival mechanism, and a form of intelligence that humans had never conceived possible. The molecular patterns told stories of entire civilizations rebuilt, of ecosystems restored, of survival against impossible odds. Hannah's people had traveled through space not as conquerors, but as healers and survivors. Scientists asked difficult questions. Military representatives remained suspicious. But something had fundamentally changed in how humans viewed potential alien life. Hannah's molecular structure seemed to pulse with anticipation during the presentation. It was as if she understood the significance of this moment, the first true communication between her species and humanity. Dr. Sungho supported J1, presenting additional research that confirmed the young scientist's findings. Their combined expertise gave weight to a discovery that would reshape human understanding of intelligent life. The presentation concluded with a simple but powerful message: fear had prevented understanding. Communication could change everything. As the quantum communication channels closed, Hannah's molecular structure created a pattern that could only be interpreted as hope. A complex, beautiful dance of molecules that spoke of potential futures, of understanding, of connection. J1 looked at her, understanding that they had done more than make a scientific discovery. They had opened a door between two completely different forms of intelligence. The universe suddenly felt larger. And smaller. All at the same time, the world changed quietly, without dramatic explosions or massive conflicts. Hannah's arrival became a turning point in human understanding of life beyond Earth. What began as a potential threat transformed into humanity's most significant scientific breakthrough. Diplomatic channels opened slowly. Scientists from multiple countries collaborated to understand Hannah's molecular communication. Her ability to adapt and heal became a source of wonder rather than fear. J1 watched as the first collaborative projects began. Hannah could regenerate damaged ecosystems with remarkable speed. Regions destroyed by environmental disasters could now be restored in months instead of decades. Her molecular structures could repair soil, clean water, and rebuild complex biological systems. Government representatives who once demanded her containment now requested her assistance. Damaged agricultural regions in Africa received her first major restoration project. Barren lands transformed into green landscapes within weeks. The technological implications were staggering. Hannah's molecular adaptation techniques could solve multiple global challenges. Climate change mitigation, environmental restoration, and resource management suddenly seemed possible. Her communication became more complex. Through J1's quantum translator, she shared knowledge about interstellar survival techniques. Humanity learned about adaptation strategies that went beyond simple biological understanding. Research facilities around the world competed to collaborate with her. What was once a containment project became an international scientific partnership. Hannah was no longer a specimen, she was a respected scientific contributor. The military's perspective shifted dramatically. Instead of seeing her as a potential weapon, they recognized her as a crucial technological asset. Her ability to adapt and communicate offered unprecedented strategic advantages. J1 became the primary liaison between Hannah and human scientific communities. His understanding of her molecular language made him uniquely qualified to translate her complex communications. International conferences discussed the philosophical implications of her existence. What did it mean to be intelligent? How could humanity understand life forms so fundamentally different from human biology? Hannah's molecular structures continued to surprise researchers. She could communicate complex scientific concepts through subtle transformations that would take humans years to comprehend. Each interaction revealed new layers of intelligence. The first interstellar collaborative mission was planned. Hannah would be part of a research team exploring previously unreachable planetary systems. Her adaptive capabilities made her the perfect navigator and researcher. Politicians who once demanded her containment now spoke about interstellar cooperation. Global perspectives shifted from fear to curiosity, from defensive postures to collaborative potential. Educational systems began introducing new curriculum about potential alien communication. Children learned about molecular intelligence, about looking beyond traditional understanding of life and communication. J1 watched these transformations with a sense of quiet satisfaction. He had seen something in Hannah that others had missed. Her fundamental desire to connect, to understand, to help. The quantum translator that had first broken through the communication barrier now became a standard tool in xenobiological research. Universities around the world developed new departments focused on molecular communication. Hannah's original containment chamber was converted into a research center. The walls that once represented fear now symbolized human potential for understanding and collaboration. Global scientific communities celebrated a new era of exploration. Humanity had taken its first real step towards understanding life beyond traditional biological boundaries. As the first collaborative interstellar mission prepared for launch, Hannah's molecular structure created a complex pattern. Through J1's translator, it translated simply, together. The universe had suddenly become a little less lonely. A little more connected. And it all started with one human who was willing to listen.